They didn't wear crowns. They didn't sit on thrones. They didn't rule from palaces. And yet, they controlled nations. Wars began because of their whispers. Kings fell because of their silence. Empires moved without ever knowing who pushed them. No flags, no monuments, no history books written in their name. And today, most people don't even know they existed. This is the story of the shadowed society that ruled in silence. History shows us the light, but power lives in the shadows. This is Obscura Imperium, where forgotten empires, secret societies, and hidden rulers are brought back into the dark, not to glorify them, but to expose how the world was truly shaped. History tells us stories about emperors, about generals, about revolutions fought in the open. But history rarely tells you about who stood behind them, because real power doesn't announce itself. It hides, it observes, it waits. Across centuries, secret societies formed, not as myths, not as legends, but as organized networks of influence. They operated above borders, above religions, above governments. Their members were advisors, bankers, scholars, priests, and sometimes executioners. They didn't need armies, they borrowed them. They didn't rule lands, they ruled decisions. And once you understand how they worked, you'll never look at history the same way again. Tonight, we uncover obscure historical facts, buried records, and patterns historians rarely connect. This is shadowed history, where silence was the loudest weapon of all. The first rule of secret power is not being seen. These secret societies didn't emerge from chaos, they emerged from structure. They organized themselves like living machines. Small cells, limited knowledge, strict loyalty. One member never knew the full picture, only the piece they were allowed to see. This wasn't paranoia, it was design. Because when power fragments itself, it becomes untouchable. Many of these secret orders modeled themselves after ancient priesthoods, groups that controlled calendars, rituals, and knowledge. And knowledge was power. If you knew when crops failed, when eclipses arrived, when kings feared the gods, you could rule without ever holding a sword. History remembers rulers, but rulers often listened to someone else. Behind emperors stood counselors who were never elected. Behind kings stood financiers who never bowed. Behind popes stood orders that answered to no church. Some secret societies placed members directly inside royal courts. Others influenced trade routes, controlled debts, or funded wars from both sides. If a king obeyed, he ruled longer. If he resisted, his reign ended abruptly. Through marriage alliances, through religious decrees, through economic pressure. The illusion was sovereignty, the reality was management. This wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. Secret societies rarely spoke openly. They spoke in symbols, because symbols survive longer than words. An eye carved above a doorway,
a geometric pattern on a cathedral floor, a phrase repeated across centuries. These weren't decorations, they were signatures, ways for members to recognize one another across borders, across time. To the public, they meant nothing. To the initiated, they meant everything. And the greatest trick? Convincing the world these symbols were meaningless. Secret societies didn't want anarchy. They wanted predictability. Chaos breaks systems. Stability preserves influence. So instead of overthrowing empires, they guided them, funding one war to weaken another power, supporting reforms that looked progressive but benefited elites, encouraging revolutions only when outcomes were guaranteed. They didn't fear change, they designed it. This is why many revolutions replaced one elite with another. Different faces, same structures. So why aren't they in textbooks? Because secret societies understood a final truth. History is written by those who leave records, and they made sure they didn't. They used intermediaries, destroyed archives, worked through institutions instead of names. When historians searched, there was nothing solid to find. Only patterns, coincidences, whispers. And whispers are easy to dismiss. Here is the uncomfortable question. Did these societies disappear, or did they simply evolve? Today's power doesn't need cloaks. It needs data, influence, control over narratives. The methods changed, the philosophy didn't. Invisible, unaccountable, everywhere. And if history teaches us anything, it's that silence has always been the loudest form of power. They ruled without ruling. They commanded without orders. They shaped the world by never stepping into the light. And maybe the greatest secret isn't that they existed. It's that we're still living inside systems they designed. If this story made you question history, then history is doing its job. Empires rise, empires fall, but influence survives. You've been watching Obscura Imperium, a place where shadowed history is uncovered, silence is questioned, and power is never taken at face value. Subscribe and remain vigilant, because the shadows are always watching.